welcome back to another edition of VCTV. I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott, and we've got an exciting episode here for you today as we are looking at a very relevant topic for us here in 2020, but even more so looking towards the years ahead, and that is work in remote technologies. Not only how are we going to be working, and whether that's in office, out of office, flexible, whatever that may look, but what are the technologies that are going to help us do this? What are the new technologies that are starting to emerge that we as investors and entrepreneurs are looking at? Investors at looking at investing and entrepreneurs looking at building. Where are those gaps and opportunities to solve problems in these new workplaces that we are migrating to, whether they be what we once were in terms of traditional 9-to-5 offices, or this new flexible space where we have employees and team members everywhere working 24 hours on different cycles in different regions in different parts of the world. A lot to be had here, a lot of discussion to be had as this new wave of working shifts and changes for all of us, and how these technologies, again, will empower us to be successful and grow our businesses. With that being said, a big thank you to you, our audience, for tuning in. If you like what you hear today on VCTV, make sure you click that big red subscribe button down there to tune into more VCTV as we host episodes all day, every day, here live for you. And with that, if you'd like to be on a show like today, like our other investors, do reach out to the team and or myself. We'd love to find the right industry, topic, or region around the world for you to speak about. Share your thoughts and insights as well with our live audience. And entrepreneurs, we are less than 60 days, less than 60, until the end of the year. This is the last sprint you have to do any kind of funding or promotion before we turn into the next year. There is a virtual stage here for you at VCTV to get up and pitch us as investors. Focus on your industry. Not only to just get real-time feedback on your product or service, but also to build foundational relationships with us focused in your area and exposure to our live audience. Do reach out to the team and or myself. We'd love to find the right set for you. With that, big thank you to the LATOKEN team, Maria, and to the entire organization for making VCTV possible every single day. I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott. Let's go ahead and get started. Guys, a big warm welcome to each of you today. Let's kick it off with Jose. Jose, if you can, a little intro and a little background. We'll come around for all intros and then we'll dive in right into today's topic.
Thank you, Kyle. Most happy to be again on VCTV, and I participated in this topic in the previous show, so I'm most happy and excited to be on this one as well, because I got some very interesting last-minute data on this subject, and let's see what comes out of this. So my name is Jose Grasa. I'm a serial entrepreneur for more or less 40 years. Have been in several industries, started in entertainment, and later on shifted to aviation, and from there to chemicals, and eventually to consumer products. I've been building brands, and the last 20 years focused exclusively on software development and branding of software products. I've also been active more or less 26 years as a business angel, essentially in the technology area. I've also been a VC for 3 years and an advisor for some VC companies as well as government. And what excites me today, and that's what I see, is that this digital transformation that we are all undergoing has had and will have, and today it has a huge impact in our lives. I see it as a positive outcome. Definitely things will shift, and let's see what comes out today on this VCTV.
I couldn't agree more, and I'll hold my comments to that as well. And I think we're all feeling very similar, but also excited to hear what everyone else has to say. Jose, thank you and welcome. Addie, welcome to the show. First time guest here with Maria and I. We're absolutely pleased to have you. If you can, a little intro and a little background as well for the audience.
Sure. Good morning. Thanks so much for having me. So I'm also, my background is a serial entrepreneur, actually still am, I guess. Working through my 4th company at the moment. Been doing mainly cybersecurity and networking for the past 20-something years. So sold my first 3 companies. The first one was the kind of inventor of the UTM firewall before it became a term. Sold it to Checkpoint. Most recent company was acquired by BlackBerry in the secure file sharing space. So been doing quite a bit of that. Have also been investing in the past few years through J Ventures, which is a new fund that we started here in Palo Alto. There are about over 100 LPs, very, very seasoned professionals that have pretty unique ways of helping the company. So that's a fun thing I'm doing as well as a side gig, frankly. But it's always helpful. And I guess as far as remote work and distributed workforce, I got into this with my new company. We started prior to COVID-19, having this new networking and security technology, which apparently helps everybody get connected much faster and in a way that's more secure. And obviously, as the pandemic hit, this became a very hot topic to handle. And we're kind of fortunate to be there in the right timing to help companies stay connected while they need to, because everybody's working from home. So this is how I got into this topic.
Wonderful. And just for a quick reference, in terms of the fund that you have here in Palo Alto or the Bay Area, pardon me, if you could share just a little bit more with our audience, if you're okay to do so, what do you guys typically invest in? Is there a particular range or ticket size in terms of industry as well, just for them to learn a little bit more about this exciting venture you have, even though it may be a side gig? There's some great entrepreneurs out there.
Yes, no, they're very, very impressive people at this fund, the present company excluded, and they are. It's a very wide range of investments from cybersecurity to construction. I think we've done some construction. We have. I think like maybe 50% of our members are also prominent VCs in the Bay Area. Each one has their own expertise. So we've done biotech, we've done cybersecurity, pretty much all across the spectrum. Usually we do, obviously early stage, usually in conjunction with some other institutional investor. So this is kind of our method here. I mean, just if you're early stage and you have some traction, just contact me. I'll be happy to make the intro.
There you go. All right. Well, thank you so much, Addy. Last but not least, Brett, welcome back. It's a pleasure. Intro, background for everybody, please.
Sure. Thanks for having me. And it's hard to follow up these two gentlemen. So Brett Noyes, founder and director of Unventures. We're an early stage investor syndicate. So we work with about 500 VCs throughout the United States and a little bit globally, syndicating companies. We find companies that fit our thesis. So in the last year, we kind of expanded our thesis from being fully fintech focused to adding SMB automation, future of work relevant to today, and then regulatory and data compliance are kind of the core areas of companies that we're looking at. Companies are generally in the pre-seed to Series A is where we focus. And ideally we'll be grouping together a series of angels or high net worth investors, putting them into an SPV and making a direct investment in the range of about 100K to 250K. And then we continue to work with the companies that we syndicate and help them close out their rounds. What else here? Previous work, we started out as a fintech incubation program in the Bay Area. And we were always doing this remotely. So before it was cool, we were managing entrepreneurs kind of around the world. So one of our companies is based in Brazil, several in Europe, all throughout the United States. So this for us, as this has kind of become the evolution and it's becoming now a new investment kind of area, it's kind of an area that we've always been thinking about and always been looking at tools just for ourselves that could help us be better at what we do. So kind of exciting to see it kind of become its own investment class.
Absolutely. And welcome again, gentlemen, each of you, and excited to dive into today's topic, focus around the future of work and remote technologies. Looking at the intersection of how technology may cross into our work patterns, not only how we do work, but where we do work, and helping us to be more effective, whether that be in communication, whether that be in general efficiency of getting things done. et cetera. There's a ton to talk about. And I watched a video recently on, I believe it was the Wall Street Journal, about the future of office spaces and how office spaces were changing and how technology was starting to be integrated into the future of offices or current offices, where they were looking at, contactless entrances, higher security. So Addie, get ready to talk a little bit about that. Also looking at adding in terms of medical detection or medical technology, so checking temperatures as people walk in. But then also the interesting part about this all was the flexible schedule that people saw, and people are seeming to kind of fall in this common thread of, it may not everyone may not be fully remote. Instead, people are looking at this flexible schedule of being into an office of 1 to a few days versus 5 days a week. And the idea that an office has changed in our minds looking forward. Something we've been thinking about, something we've been talking about for a long time, and now it's finally been a forced function. On the flip side, technology. A lot of what we do in terms of communication has to change, right? As Brett mentioned, he's got teams and companies all around the world, as each of us have or have worked in at some point here. That comes with its own hurdles, we'll just say, all right? How do you talk? How do you make sure things get done on time? How do you continue to progress a company when everybody is all over the place? And what technology can help us? We saw Zoom, we all crashed Zoom earlier in the year. And now here we are. But yeah, I want to come to each of you guys with that little preamble there. Where do you see things currently when it comes to work and remote technologies as they are integrating? And Jose, let's start with you. You got some interesting data points. I don't know if this is the right time, but I'm loving to hear them. Where do you see things currently in terms of work and remote tech and how those intersect with us?
So I'm going to start a little bit extreme to open the mindset. So the extreme is like this. Now, the future of humanity definitely is not there on this planet, okay? And may not even be in this universe. So if we look at that perspective, right, then we certainly must understand that working in the same space, if you are on another planet or in another universe, is completely out of the question, okay? Now let's trim this down. So we are thinking now very, very, we would say here on Earth, to think global, right? Now, we are not now thinking universal wise, okay? Now, let's trim it down to the Earth, okay? So if you look at the Earth, then, we would say like, okay, so take that example. Now, does it really make sense to be in the same place, if you look at future thinking? For some industries, yes, like production, right? For the service industry, definitely I would say no. Not even for paper handling. No, until now we had a lot of paper. We still have a lot of paper handling in our lives. But with electronic documentation, so everybody, I remember myself, I don't write notes anymore on paper. I don't keep paper, right? Even your invoices, store digital wise. Why should you have paper? So if you look at that process and the whole evolution of it, you come up to a point that you say, you know what? Sure, I like to be in contact with other team members, right? I like to have coffee with them, right? But it's not a must, okay? And it's much more convenient to do it at home. And it definitely, I would say for a lot of people, it's much more convenient not to be in traffic in the morning and in the afternoon. So it's like 2 hours or at least 1 hour that you don't spend, that you could spend on anything else that is more useful. So looking at that point, I would say definitely that the future of working, okay, is not in one space. For certain industries, yes. For most of them, no. Now, let's move it one point further. So, if you look at the working process that you are involving today, the efficiency, right, and the exchange that you have, I can tell you that if I think back, like more or less, like, let me think, like 15 years, maybe 20 years, that I worked in one space. Even the guy that was in the front desk of me when I was a department manager, right? There were days that we didn't exchange one word, okay? And had no access to what he was doing unless I would walk to his desk, right? So think about now, everything is computer-wise. So the guy is doing something, you immediately get a message or a doc or whatever he's working on, you know immediately what's happening. So more efficiency than this, I would say it's almost impossible. And you don't need to be on the same place together to do this. Okay. So this is the status. Now look at a very specific problem which needs to be solved, okay, which is unemployment. Okay, we have a bunch of people today already working. I'll give the example of influencers, right? I was just checking 2 hours before I started. I was really astonished of the amount of money they work for one post. There are guys, they're getting $1,000 just for putting one post, and then you are thinking, wow, and they're at home, they're an influencer, right? And they get $1,000 for just putting one post. But this is happening today. Okay, so and look at the other side of the medal. It's like, okay, are you going to your office, earning to $2,000 or $3,000 a month if you can get 2 or 3 posts in the same day and have the $3,000? So this should put you thinking that we are going to have a huge amount of contractors servicing the companies, okay, and that's where I see the trend. And then we're going to start thinking about all these guys that are unemployed, right? There are 430 million unemployed people global-wise permanently. Now, if they start participating, which is the case in this process, then suddenly you will see a huge amount of these individuals that will start taking part of the process, and they get from unemployment to employment. And I would leave it like that. So that we think a little bit more about this, about this part of the problem.
Jose throwing the curveballs. I love it. I mean, we got shaking heads all over the place. This is exciting. So thank you, Jose. Addy, I want to come to you next, and then Brett, I'm going to hold you to last because I saw you shaking your head the whole time. I know you got a ton to share. So Addy, current state, what are you seeing furthering on Jose's point, but also from your perspective? I mean, he brought up some good points, both being in the Bay Area. For me to get to you right now, it's going to be potentially 2 hours in traffic in a different time of the year. Right now, we jumped on 15 minutes ago, and here we are talking. But that being said, there's much more to the bigger picture. So what are you seeing as the current state?
I mean, my belief is that there is a generational shift in how people are going to work. Obviously, I think it started pre-COVID, but COVID is making it much more, pronounced for sure. I can frankly argue both sides of this because, my team is really anxious to go back to the office and meet in person and have that coffee and have that water cooler talks. And then you can argue that, that helps transparency in the company and that helps, information being distributed, right? Again, back to the water cooler. And then you can also argue that if transparency means that you might overhear something you're not supposed to, or you need to a chance encounter next to the water fountain to get information, maybe you're doing something wrong to begin with and you should do this differently, right? So I can really see both sides of it, and it's it's not easy to change all these habits and make adjust to totally remote work. I think I see some easier transition in these younger companies that, some of them have started as completely distributed to begin with, all these kind of GitHubs and companies like that. So they had this culture from day one. The older companies, the older generations, I think, are struggling a lot more with this. So it will take time for this social aspect of the transition to happen. I guess my expertise is not so much on the social side, but on the technology side, though. And keeping it down to earth for me, just kind of what I see in some of the technology. There's a bunch of technologies that people make use of, and some of them are vertical and some of them are like horizontal. And horizontally, it's MySpace, security across the board, right? If the threats are coming from the edges from where people are, you need to protect them, they have VPN connections, whatever, they're being attacked. You need to kind of take care of that. There's the speed of connecting because it needs to be better. So all these technicalities. Another horizontal thing would be collaboration tools, right? The Google Docs and Box and, Office 365 and obviously Slack and the likes, right? How do you use these? And then interestingly, I've been seeing a bunch of vertical tools as well. So, the Gong is a company in the sales space, right? So essentially it listens and transcribes salespeople's calls with customers. And then you can kind of extract keywords and see what's being said across the board, even though your salespeople might be in a different country. So, or maybe some other types of monitoring of your remote employees. So I think there are a lot of opportunities vertically and horizontally to try to better connect the enterprise once it's distributed. So this is kind of where I see the promise, and the social aspects very interesting, but probably not my expertise.
No, and I think you're bringing up some good points. I mean, working from starting a company distributed day one is one thing, right? Making a big foundational shift, as you mentioned, for any company, it takes a little bit of time, and everyone's different, right? Depending on the business model and the business itself, industry as well, as Jose mentioned. But there is definitely that need for connection, right? That need for that social aspect, and that may get solved in different ways. We may jump on and throw our virtual headsets on and jump into the Oasis and we're all good. But we may not. And there is a need, like I said, there's a lot of chatter about this flexible space where flexible schedule, where we go into an office once a week, or we start using different locations, right? There's the talks of redefining coffee shops, which the cafe and Starbucks, their original model was to bring people in. Now, there's actually a little bit of a discussion of how that model may be expanded in other cafes, where we may start to see the Starbucks actually be your Tuesday workspace. And that's part of your work schedule. Or I forget the exact company, but one of the big Fortune, or we'll say Global 2000 businesses, actually spoke about offering their employees the idea of hoteling. And hoteling, which is very different than what I thought it was. It's actually the idea of working at various locations. So you can come into the office, say once a day for your water cooler talk. You can then hotel, and that means you can go to different locations, whether that be a hotel, whether that be a co-working space, whether that be some other office flexible space. You can go there for a few days and then you can work from home. And there's budgets that are associated with this, because there's also an associated cost that changes a little bit, right? Budget reallocations. If you were a distributed team, that's different. If you are not a distributed team, there's new budgets and allocations you have to consider if you no longer have an office, but you want your employees to have those types of benefits as well. But I'll pause there. Hoteling is enough of a crazy word and definition that I'll turn it over to you, Brett. Seeing as the current state, furthering on Jose and Addie's point, and Addie, I want to come back around security in just a moment, but Brett, talk to us a little bit about what you're seeing. I mean, you've been in this space for a few years, we'll say, working remotely and distributed. How have things changed?
I don't know if it changed, so I mean, they're kind of evolving, and there's more, a mass adoption of Zoom, and like for me, it was very odd that people were kind of already doing this as part of their work. But I want to go back a step. So absolutely love what Jose said, because I think one of my comments would have been that, we're not thinking about this big picture enough. So we've definitely covered that. I think there's an aspect of all of this where, there really is a lot of different technology solutions out there. And I think most of us are just bundling them all together. So I'm sure most of us have Zoom, Slack, HubSpot, your CRM, like insert, Gong, insert sales. Like you probably have, a dozen different things that you're using. And I think the piece that's missing is they're not all integrated and talking together. I think that's one piece that's kind of the current state is we have a lot of tools. They don't all work well together. So I don't know that we need more tools. I think we need pieces that pull them all together. And then kind of going back to a little bit what Adi spoke about was, the culture stuff, right? I think one of the things that's really hard, two things, it's hard to manage is like, how do you build a remote team culture that works? And, we put more, like, these are things that I didn't care about necessarily when we were in the office. And I kind of would, put that off on somebody else to make sure we did team building, and it was kind of like one of these, things that you'd have to do and kind of, try to, build that. But like, I find it a lot more important that weekly I engage with my team. I know that we're like building some level of, teamwork that which would have been a lot easier if we were in the same room. And then also that I'm doing at least some mental, check-ins on their mental and physical health. I don't see them. I don't know what's going on with them. So I think it's really easy for some people do really well in this environment and other people don't. And from a manager standpoint, it's really hard to keep tabs on the mental and physical health of your employees.
So absolutely agree, and that's actually
tools on that side of it.
Yeah, and so I was going to have a follow-up is how are you doing this, right? Working in a distributed fashion for you, Brett, in particular, how are you handling building a culture? Because, building culture has a core component of being around each other. And that's a very historical thing. I will argue that there is a future to that, but historically we've had a very, togetherness culture around building these things. So how are you working on this with your organization?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not from like a technology standpoint, right? And I don't know where, where the business opportunity is in that side of it. But for us, it's just very much like weekly team meeting. Our team is very distributed, so we've got person in Australia, London, another one in the Bay. We had another one that was in Saudi Arabia earlier this year. Like we're all over the place as far as time zones. So we're managing that. So even having a happy hour is hard. It's like, hey, bring coffee or beer. I don't care. So I mean, it's very one-off, right? So I don't know. I mean, I think there's probably a need for some sort of more of a tracking to like know more like you gauging how our employees are really doing or if they're really happy. But we're at least trying at a more like people level to just check in to facilitate a conversation where we talk about the election. Obviously we don't want to go into that. What's going on in the world, right? As we went through different social issues this year, like how is this affecting you? And just facilitating a conversation. So, I don't know where that leads into, our core topic of like how do you build, products and services around that. But I think that these are like really the core issues that entrepreneurs should be thinking about. How do you build a remote team that has culture, and how do you scale your culture out to a remote team? I think is a really big problem to be solved.
Well, it's a huge opportunity area. If anything, Jose, I see you smiling. Do you have something to add on this?
Well, I have more or less like 2 points. I agree with a few points that Adri said, and also a few points that Brett explained. But when I talk about the things I believe in, I always give examples, right? And let me give you one example. Like 10 years ago, if you would talk about cloud computing, okay, especially banks, you would be considered crazy. Not even the regulator would accept that you would put your data, your banking data, right, on the cloud. Okay, I even remember a case of one gentleman, which was a CTO at a bank, and they had a problem that they had no storage. So he was looking for a solution, and he said, you know what? Nobody will know anyway. I'm putting it on the cloud. So he put some banking data on the cloud. Now, he was more or less crucified, right? Today, everybody has its data in the cloud. Nobody even worries about, you don't even think where it is, okay? And working remotely, is more or less, it comes to the same issue. It's just a habit. I'm building this BizMoney, right, which is basically a decentralized social economy. And if you look at the company setup, okay, we never had anybody in the office, zero, right from day one. We never even thought about, okay, so where are we going to get the staff? We have staff all over the place, all over the globe, and it goes as crazy as far as Armenia, up to, through the whole Europe, Middle East, Asia, up to the US and South America. We don't care. Okay, we want to have the best stuff at the best price, right? So you need to have and deal with the time zones. Okay, that's a real issue that you need to take care of. But that's it. And the technology that we have today, we don't use proprietary technology to manage this stuff. We just use common available technology. You like Zoom and Dropbox or Office Pro or Google Docs or whatever it is. So it's quite easy. I don't even think about it anymore. I can tell you that I was thinking about it in 1990. Okay, I started having remote teams in 1990. That's 20 years ago. At that time, it was a real headache, I can tell you, because you were struggling with the fax machine all the time. You know, you had to print it out, go to the fax machine, and then you were on the street and you had these huge mobile phones that did not even fit in your pocket, right? And then, you know, and even if you wanted to exchange a doc, then you had to set up your own tech system, which was a bulletin board service, BBS. Now, most people today don't even know anymore what it is. And the guys would store the doc there if they could, right? Now, it was a real nightmare, I can tell you. Compared to today, you know, this is so easy. So I don't see that problem anymore. I agree with Brad that it's a generational shift, and Adri also said it. It's definitely a generational shift. It may take another 10 years, the way I look at it. But these new generation, let's call them millennials, right? I'm an X generation, so the millennials, you know, if you look at their setup, the way they think, right, and the way they act, for them it's like, you know, natural. And that we still are stuck with this old system because a lot of well, managers may not be, but let me put it like this: a lot of directors, board members, right, they're still from the old generation. You know, it's still a lot of baby boomers and a lot of Generation X, even in managers' positions. So once that is taken over in the next 10 years, which definitely will happen, okay? And with all what we are facing now, imagine what the technology will be in 10 years.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So are we going to get stuck to the office? That's my question. Or are we going to move on? You know? So, yeah. So that's what you need to think about.
And it's a good question. And I think the technology piece, you know, bringing it back full circle, because we could talk for days on in office versus out of office, but it's a good segue to this technology. I mean, where should we be placing our bets, right? If we're looking at real estate, that's one thing. We're looking at technology, that's another. And when it comes to technology, one of the biggest areas of concern that's very rarely talked about, that Addy touched on, and he's also focused on, is security. How do you maintain security standards and privacy standards when you're on the move? Now, with one asterisk here, before everything happened in 2020, before 2020 in general, because as we've talked about here on VCTV, 2020 is a decade long movement here. This is not just a blip and one thing that we're looking at. We're looking at the next 10 years. Before this decade, we all traveled. We all worked in different locations. It's, again, cafes surged because of this opportunity. But data and privacy necessarily weren't really a concern, or if they were, again, they weren't talked about because things were moving so fast. The whole bring your own device, the idea of more collaboration tools, new tools, all of this stuff came into the workforce. Now, and Natty, I'm getting to my question, apologies for the lead up here. Now we move into this forced function for many, and now we're looking at this next 10 years ahead of us where flexibility may play a big portion of our work lives. Where's security? How should we be thinking? Where are the gaps? Where are the opportunities for security to play? Because it has to, in some way. If we live our lives more digitally than ever, then that makes us more open to some of the issues of being on a digital life 24/7, 365. So Addy, to you, in that incredibly long lead up, I apologize. So what is going on from a security? Where are the opportunities? Where are the gaps? Talk to us about security in the workplace in this new flexible environment.
So as it happens, I just completed an article for Forbes about this. And my more, my viewpoint, just, COVID is just this one event here, but there's a long standing shift to a more distributed enterprise or more distributed workforce that we've been seeing. So it's, anywhere from, if you think about it, you started with mainframe computers, which were incredibly centralized, going through like mini computer, personal computers, maybe a little going back to cloud computing is a little more centralized, and now IoT, 5G, COVID-19, Kubernetes, service meshes, it's all completely distributed. So it's not just remote work, I think it's the increasingly distributed enterprise that we need to deal with. And so the question is, how do you secure it and how do you connect it now? And what's interesting, and which was kind of the basis for what I do today, is realizing that pretty much everything we've done, the internet, the way the internet was designed back in the 60s, didn't take any of that into account, right? When they designed the internet, ARPANET at the time, nobody was thinking about security in any way. Nobody was thinking about the performance in any way. Nobody was thinking about how to take two networks that are discrete and connecting them together. And what's amazing is that we are pretty much using the same exact internet today and trying to do everything with this highly distributed network. And obviously it's not working. And what personally, what I felt is that everybody is trying to patch up the situation and put band-aids. So this is why we have this firewalls and VPNs and CASBs and SD-WANs and NACs and WAN optimizers. I can go on and on. There's so many patches to just make the internet work for us. And I mean, what I'm working on, by the way, is really reinventing the network instead of patching it up. That's why I'm kind of involved in that. But the problem, the core problem is, again, we are having this highly distributed enterprise. We're trying to handle this with these centralized solutions that are patches on the internet as it is. So that's why it's really difficult to protect people that are remote. How do you kind of preserve their posture? How do you prevent attacks on their links to the enterprise, which today is the VPNs and of the world that are being attacked by hackers today, because this is the weakest point, right? All the way to how do you now connect everything together to not only the data center, but to these clouds and SaaS services and IoT devices. So there's really a whole new thinking that needs to happen and hasn't happened. I mean, maybe in some places it has, but mostly not so much. And I think what we're also seeing that's really interesting is convergence of these two things, of the networking aspects and the security aspects. Because until today, you've been seeing, okay, we have Cisco is doing your networking and Palo Alto is doing your security, and you just buy 10 different solutions and kind of bolt them together, and it kind of works. What I see with a lot of companies is really the convergence of the two. You just want to get internet connectivity that provides you the security, that provides you the speed, that just gets everything connected. So I think there's a big trend around that. It's Gartner calls the SASE, S-A-S-E market, but there are a lot of different solutions. SASE,
yeah. What is that? What does that? Spell that out for us. What is SASE?
I mean, the acronym is not too good. It's Secure Access Service Edge. But the principle is let's converge networking and security and provide everybody with access to the network that's both secure and performant and just works. And so that's a big trend. And I think the distributed workforce and COVID is going to make this much more important. And that combines a lot of these different point products together, like firewalls and zero trust networks that are increasingly important, and segmentation. So we're going to see, I think, a big shift in networking and security because of the distributed nature of what we're seeing.
And Brett, thank you, Adi. Brett, to you, I know you may have some additional points on this as well. Anything to add around the security?
Yeah, just a couple thoughts on that. You're kind of talking about how people are just suddenly becoming aware of this. I think larger corporations have been aware of this for a long time. My wife worked for Salesforce for quite a few years. I mean, when you have all these people walking around with cell phones and laptops, right, there's this great opportunity to lose customer data. So larger corporations have been thinking about this, have solutions. I mean, maybe those solutions could be better, but they've been thinking about it. And through all of this, I remember hearing one panel where Goldman Sachs, in a matter of weeks, transformed their entire team to remote, or 98% of their business remote. So I feel like a lot of this exists, but it exists at the enterprise level. And so I think what I hope we're going to see in the next few years is the trickling down and making it say, hey, small distributed team, these different venture-backed companies that are running teams globally, hey, here's a solution that you could affordably buy. Because I think the solutions at some level already exist. They're just not really applicable to the either startup or the SMB or even the mid-sized enterprise yet. So I think hopefully the technology just kind of starts to trickle down.
Well,
I mean,
and real
just
quick on that, I mean, it may not be, it also may be the use case, right? Some of those software or platforms were built for one particular use case. Now in this, again, forced function and what we're looking towards in the future, it's a little bit different, right? Security's thought about a little differently, I think, to Addie's point and also
I just
yours.
don't think it's been a top of mind thing for the smaller, companies when you're just trying to find product market fit, raise your next round. Like if you're in the venture space, security is probably the last thing. You're going to die for a million different reasons, but it's like, but once you get to a certain size, it's like, and it's going to be something that we're all going to be very concerned with. So I look forward to seeing the stuff that Addie's working on and commercializing here in the next few years.
I mean, I think even the larger enterprises, nobody was expecting the capacity and the, of what they'll need to deal with right now. And, there was a rush to buy Cisco VPN routers, like secondhand ones, whatever you can get your hands on, to just kind of mitigate the problem at first. But I think now people are thinking, okay, what's the right way of solving it? this capacity is way, way bigger than we ever thought it's going to be. It's a much more permanent situation than just, an hour, a weekend, or a trip. So I think they're going to be changing.
One of the things I think you said that I really liked or resonated with we need a whole new way of thinking, and we kind of really need to kind of go back to scratch and like start over, build new products and services, not build patches to what already exists.
Yep.
And I think Jose hit on that at a high level.
Yes, so I think I've been looking at this issue of patches. It's quite an interesting subject that you brought up, Brett. So the issue is that the following: software and technology goes so fast that every 3-4 years, if you look back at the software, it's completely obsolete. Now, the problem is, and a lot of banks have been dealing with this, is that they invested huge sums of money in those systems, right? And they don't want to get rid of it. So what they do is they patch it on over and over and over. Now, it's quite normal if you get, I can tell you, if there are some banks you will go in and you will see software and technologies that are 10 years or more old, right? And then you have the latest technologies and halfway. So it's like a big mix, and it runs, right? But God knows how it runs, because one day it will break up. Now, I've been building software for 20 years now on a row. And what I can tell you is that every 3-4 years, I just throw it away. I just completely throw it away, because the amount of money that you need to patch it up, okay? And sure, it's a little bit cheaper than making it from scratch, but the amount of traction that you get and the efficiency that you get by just producing new one compensates largely that small amount of extra investment that you are making. So it doesn't make any sense. And what you're going to see now with low-code solution is that, one developer can go and account up to 10 developers nowadays. And in about 3 to 5 years from now, right? Maximum 5 years, you're going to see what they call citizen developers. That people that don't know code at all. And they start programming these apps and everything. So everything is going to get into a massive speed. Just to finishing here, I think this is interesting for everybody to know. We are developing something which is quite unique, and it touches the setup on how you're going to build a business, okay? Now, building a business today costs more or less like 2 to 5 years. Now, what would you say if you can do it in 6 months? What would you say if you could have the traction that you normally would get, if you have 5 years and you can get it in 6 months? What if you say that this all works on your smartphone fully remotely? Mm-hmm. No office needed, right? So, and I would like to leave it like that, because this is actual, okay? We're not talking about future thinking.
Well, and Jose, to your point, I mean, a few years, technology being outdated just for a little bit or even a decade, I mean, we can go well beyond that. There's organizations we all know that are running on code from the 70s still, right? To Addie's point and Brett's around security, this is definitely still an issue. But the really unique point you bring up as we transition to the next question here is the rapid speed, right? Going to market. That's also a mindset shift for organizations and for product leaders of all, is the idea of going from a few years of product development down to, we'll call it six to 12 months. We'll be generous and we won't go too aggressive yet, but bringing in these new solutions, rapidly bringing down that pace, that's going to be a game changer for many. And guys, I want to come to each of you around areas of opportunity where you're seeing either the gaps and the needs, or where you're thinking about placing bets for our audience, so that they, as investors, can know where to be paying attention to, and entrepreneurs, where to start building, to Jose's point, maybe in 6 months versus 5 years, to deploy new solutions, or they should be looking at in terms of products and services. So Brett, I want to come to you and start with you first. Areas of opportunity, where are you seeing, where should people be paying attention to? Oh, you are on mute. Good, sir.
Yeah, I was just kind of scratching down some notes on that particular thing. So I think 3 areas that I think are most interesting to me is, how do you manage and build culture remotely, employee mental and physical health, like how do you manage that? And another piece that we didn't really hit on in this one is, but the regulatory challenges, right? So when you set up employees in different states, you start to have businesses licenses and regulatory and all the compliance stuff that comes with that. So making that easy and simple are 3 core areas that I'm focused on.
And all very necessary as well. The regulation situation is actually a big topic that, again, has yet to be really discussed at length, because if you have a distributed workforce, where do you consider your home base, and where do you have certain things that you may have to have in place? And that creates a huge HR potential issue for many organizations. So we'll pause there. Addie, to you, areas of opportunity, what are you seeing that people should be focused on here over the next couple, not just months, but also a couple of years in this space?
Yeah. So I think to Brett's point, some way of managing these distributed teams in a way that you can get enough visibility into their, well-being and productivity and what they're doing. Still a challenge. Maybe the discrete tools exist, but it's hard to put it together. I mean, I'm having challenges with, figuring out how people are feeling about things as by, Zoom, and not seeing the, interactions of people. And then obviously, like I said, security and networking, this convergence that we're seeing, the transition to distributed, nodes all over the world. That's a very interesting one to figure out. And I see everybody kind of trying to come up with something. So I guess these are the 2 issues that are in front of mind for me. Top of mind for me.
And I'm taking notes, just as Brett is as well, because I think these are very important topics for everyone to have, and something we should all dive deeper into, and also, again, keep top of mind. So I'll drop those in the show notes where we're available for everybody. But the management of well-being, I mean, connecting like this virtually is a very different experience, even though it may not seem like it, than talking with someone one-on-one in person, right? There's a different level of comfort that comes from those interactions. And I think you're bringing up, again, both of you, a good point of well-being and how to have those points of communication and discussions with people. And Addie and Brett and myself and Jose, we're probably not the only ones. Guaranteed, we're not the only ones that may be having difficulty on all sides of this as well. So out there that are listening, and managers, investors, entrepreneurs, and the like, just know you're not alone in this battle. And there's a need for this. This is why we're talking about these as opportunities. It's also a good thing to be talking about with others in your space as well. So don't hesitate and don't feel alone. Don't hesitate to talk to others, and don't feel like you're alone in this battle. We're 4 individuals talking about it right now. Jose, areas of opportunity, where else should people be focusing?
Well, Adi said something very important, and it reminded me of something from the past. He said, how can I feel, right, what's going on in somebody else? Okay. I remember that at the beginning when Skype started, okay, and I started moving people from, from other technologies that we had into Skype, and everything was texted, right? There was no voice initially. The voice came later, and now we have video. I remember that I was so proficient in talking to my team that I could feel the way they were writing at that moment, okay? And the words they would use and the way they would write, I could feel what the more or less the state of mind was that he had. If he had a problem, if it was going well or not. Now, let's look at a product like Grammarly, okay? If you take Grammarly, you can write in an X amount of different styles and express in different ways, right? It's a perfect product. And with that, I'm just trying to explain that you can, even with limited tools, feel how somebody is as an expression. Now, that's the point. The thoughts are like this. We are coming into a human evolution, okay, that nothing will work anymore without artificial intelligence. And we need to be convinced about that, because the speed is so fast that we are not able to follow it up. It's impossible for us as humans to process the amount of data that we are facing every day, either if it's video or interacting or documents or whatever it is. So definitely AI, machine learning, and then you can discuss blockchain, yes or no. You know, there's a lot of discussion, but definitely some kind of a recording system, okay? Definitely it is the future, and it doesn't matter where you look at. AI, you know, machine learning, you know, will be embedded into everything, including, I strongly believe, in security. Okay, I'm not the right guy to talk about this, but I'm just would shift it to Adi, you know, for him to talk about that.
That's okay, and I couldn't agree more. I'll talk about blockchain all day with you. I'm sure Brett will as well. So you definitely bring up the right topics, but AI, excuse me, and ML, so artificial intelligence, machine learning, there is a huge need for that. And I think we're still figuring out what that need will be and how to use it effective in the workplace as we look towards this next future decade ahead of us. With that, gentlemen, I want to come to each of you for closing thoughts and also where everyone can find you online as we come to the top of the hour as well. So Brett, let's start with you. Closing thoughts, and then where can everyone find you online to continue the conversation around this and others?
Yeah, I mean, I'll keep it very brief. Just building on what you know, the other colleagues have said on the panel, right? Just thinking big, right? I think we're at a stage in all of this where we have to really just rethink everything. So don't think an iterative, you know, next, you know, just, you know, one step ahead of, you know, the tool, making a better version of the Zoom or something. I see that on a very regular basis. So just think about big ideas and think about maybe just rebuilding stuff from scratch. I think there's some really great ideas that I gained from this panel today. Brett Noyes, you can find me on LinkedIn at Brett Noyes, and BRNOYES at unventures.co.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Brett. And couldn't agree more. Think towards that future, not just today, not just tomorrow, but how does this affect your organization and your business? Or if you're building for one of those, for the foreseeable future as well, as things are a little bit more flexible. Jose, to you, closing thoughts. Where can everyone find you? Throwing it right back to you.
Okay, so you can find me at LinkedIn on the Jose Graca with a C. You can also just search up for BizMoney, because that's the easiest way to find me, including on LinkedIn. You can also, I never said it, but I think it should be mentioned, you can also find me on VCTV. So just go to the website, it's there. Just click on it, right? So that's another way to get in touch. And closing thoughts, I definitely would like to leave the message as the following. You know, we humans, we started from almost zero, right? And the evolution has been constant. And this is not the end. The evolution will continue. And I think we should not be afraid of just moving on. Not be afraid of the machines and everything else. I think we are keen enough to put in the needed securities, that we are secured, that it will not take over, more or less. And that's my closing thoughts for today. And just think about what it will be in the next 5 years.
Absolutely. We won't say, we don't expect to see the Terminator in the next 5 years. So to Jose's point, all jokes aside, definitely embrace technology and how it can be helpful to you into your organization versus pushing against it as well. And Adi, last but not least, close us out. Closing thoughts, and where can everyone find you online?
Okay, very quick. I think this pandemic has actually opened up a lot of opportunities, right? Because to rethink things, to move stuff in a much faster than before. So all in all, that's, at least from a technology standpoint, that's exciting times to be able to do new things. As far as finding me, my email is adi@ananda.net, Ananda Networks. Just send me an email and I'll try to get back to you.
Wonderful. All, thank you so much. I really appreciate all your thoughts and insights in a very important topic for all of us. And again, not just for today, but also for the decade ahead. Big thank you to your audience for tuning in. If you like what you heard, make sure you click that big subscribe button down there. Also give us a thumbs up. Do reach out if you'd like to be on a show like today, like other investors on this panel and others as well as we host here on VCTV. We'd love to have you talk about technologies, industries, and regions around the world where you're an expert or a thought leader in and want to share your thoughts and insights as well. Entrepreneurs, I said it before, I'll say it again, you got less than 60 days left in the year of 2020. Reach out to us if you'd like to join us on the virtual stage here at VCTV to pitch us as investors to get real-time feedback on your company, product, or service. As Jose mentioned, things are moving faster than ever. Why not get a little bit of quick feedback in return from those who are focused on your industry or your area as well, but also build a foundational relationship with us as investors and get exposure to our great live audience. Do reach out to the team and or myself. We'd love to find the right spot for you. With that, a big thank you to the LA Token team, to Maria, and to the entire organization for making VCTV possible every single day. I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott. You can find me along with all of our investors online 24/7, 365 at Kyle Ellicott and all social media. And with that, we'll be back here with a little bit more VCTV later today. Take care, everybody.